Most Christians believe God loves them. You've heard it your whole life. You can quote the verses. You can sing the songs. You can even preach it to someone else. But believing that God loves you and actually experiencing His love are two completely different realities. And if you're honest, there are days when His love feels distant, abstract, almost theoretical. You know it's true in your head, but it hasn't sunk into your heart. Here's the tension most people never admit. You're trying to grow in God's love by doing more. More prayer, more obedience, more discipline, more effort. Somewhere deep down, you've absorbed the idea that if you become a better Christian, you'll finally feel closer to Him. So when you don't feel His love, your instinct is to try harder. But the harder you try, the more exhausted you become, and the distance doesn't close. The truth is this: God's love toward you is not increasing. It's not fluctuating. It's not responding to your performance. It is already full, already complete, already fixed. You don't grow in God's love by making Him love you more. You grow by becoming more aware of the love that has never changed. And that changes everything. Because if His love is constant, then the problem isn't His affection. It's your perception. Think about it like the sun. The sun doesn't get brighter depending on your mood. But if you close the blinds, sit in a dark room and say, "Why is there no light?" The issue isn't the sun, it's the barrier. In the same way, many believers have internal blinds: shame, fear, performance-based thinking, unresolved guilt. These things don't reduce God's love. They reduce your ability to receive it. And here's what's powerful. The moment you realize that God isn't withholding love from you, something shifts. You stop striving to earn what has already been given. You stop negotiating with God through your good behavior. You stop assuming distance whenever you fail. Instead of asking, "How do I make God love me more?" you begin asking, "What's blocking me from receiving what's already mine?" Growing in God's love begins right here, not with effort, but with awareness. Not with performance, but with surrendering the belief that love must be earned. When you understand that His love is the starting point, not the reward at the finish line, you finally step out of survival mode Christianity and into relationship. And that shift alone can change the way you pray, worship, and live every single day. If God's love is already complete, then the real question becomes this: why don't you always feel it? Why are there days when worship feels dry, prayer feels empty, and God feels silent? It's not because His love has decreased. It's because your awareness of it fluctuates, and awareness is shaped by what you focus on. Most believers live with a subtle performance mindset. Even if you say you're saved by grace, deep down you still measure closeness with God by your recent behavior. If you had a good week spiritually, you feel confident. If you failed, you withdraw. You pray differently. You approach Him cautiously. And without realizing it, you've turned love into a reward system instead of a relationship. But love that can be earned can also be lost. And that's not the gospel. The love of God isn't a thermometer reacting to your spiritual temperature. It's the foundation beneath your feet. What changes is not His heart toward you. It's your internal posture toward Him. Shame narrows your vision. Guilt makes you hide. Fear makes you assume distance. And when your internal world is clouded, love feels faint. So how does awareness grow? It grows when you intentionally remove what distorts it. That means confronting shame instead of suppressing it. That means confessing quickly instead of hiding quietly. That means reminding yourself of truth even when your emotions disagree. Awareness grows when you stop interpreting God through your failures and start interpreting your failures through God's unchanging love. This is why some of the most broken seasons of your life can become the deepest revelations of His love. When you have nothing left to perform with, nothing left to prove, and nothing left to negotiate, you finally come empty. And empty hands receive better than clenched fists. Many people don't grow in God's love because they're still trying to manage their image instead of surrendering their heart. Everything I make here is for you. But if you ever want to go deeper to support this mission, check out the Disciple or Pillar memberships. It just helps us build more for those who want more. If God's love is constant and your awareness is what grows, then we have to confront the real obstacle: shame. Not the kind that corrects you when you're wrong, but the kind that whispers, "You're not worthy to come close." Shame doesn't just make you feel bad about what you did. It makes you feel bad about who you are. And when shame becomes your lens, even God's love feels intimidating instead of inviting. This is why after you fail, your first instinct isn't to run toward God, it's to pull away. You pray less. You worship quieter. You avoid sitting in stillness because silence feels exposing. But distance was never God's reaction to your weakness. Distance is usually your reaction to your own disappointment. And the longer you sit in that self-judgment, the more you misinterpret His heart. Shame convinces you that growth in God's love requires cleaning yourself up first. It tells you, fix this habit, become more disciplined, prove you're serious, then come back. But that thinking turns the cross into a waiting room instead of an open door. The entire foundation of your faith is that love met you at your worst, not your best. If God only loved the perfected version of you, then grace would not be grace. Here's the shift. The moment you bring your shame into the light, it loses power. Not because you suddenly become flawless, but because honesty reconnects you to intimacy. Love grows where hiding stops. When you stop pretending, stop negotiating, and stop filtering yourself before God, something changes. You begin to experience His love not as approval of perfection, but as presence in weakness. This is why some of the most transformative prayers are not long or poetic. They're raw and simple. God, I messed up. God, I'm tired. God, I feel distant. That kind of honesty breaks the illusion that you need to impress Him. And when performance dies, intimacy begins. You start realizing that God's love isn't fragile. It doesn't retreat when you stumble. It doesn't hesitate when you struggle. Growing in God's love requires courage, not the courage to be impressive, but the courage to be seen. When shame no longer dictates your posture, you stop shrinking back and start leaning in. And leaning in, even when you feel unworthy, is one of the deepest acts of faith you can make. At the end of it all, growing in God's love comes down to one word: surrender. Not surrender as defeat, not surrender as weakness, but surrender as release. Because as long as you're trying to manage your image before God, trying to maintain spiritual momentum, trying to look consistent, trying to prove you're serious, love will always feel conditional. Performance creates pressure, and pressure suffocates intimacy. Here's what most people don't realize. You can obey God and still be performing. You can serve, pray, fast, and post Bible verses, and still be operating from fear instead of love. Performance says, if I do this right, God will stay close. Surrender says, He is already close, so I can rest. That difference changes everything. One produces anxiety, the other produces peace. When surrender replaces performance, your spiritual life shifts from striving to responding. You're no longer trying to earn love, you're living from it. Prayer stops being a duty and becomes connection. Worship stops being a routine and becomes gratitude. Obedience stops being a way to secure approval and becomes a natural overflow of relationship. You don't grow in God's love by climbing toward Him. You grow by allowing yourself to fall into what's already holding you. And this is the freedom so many believers are missing. You don't have to carry the pressure of becoming worthy. You don't have to keep score of your spiritual highs and lows. You don't have to constantly wonder if you've done enough this week to feel close again. God's love is not a ladder, it's a foundation. And foundations are meant to be stood on, not climbed. So what does surrender actually look like? It looks like showing up honestly instead of impressively. It looks like confessing quickly instead of hiding slowly. It looks like choosing trust when your emotions fluctuate. It looks like letting go of the need to control how you're perceived and simply allowing yourself to be loved. That kind of surrender is not passive. It's powerful, because it dismantles the illusion that you are responsible for sustaining divine affection. And when you finally release performance, something unexpected happens. Love feels lighter, closer, warmer. Not because God moved nearer, but because you stopped running. Growing in God's love isn't about increasing His heart toward you. It's about resting in what has always been true. And when you learn to rest there, relationship replaces religion, and peace replaces pressure.